The angel realm, a dimension of eternal white, a sanctuary of absolute silence and unshakable order, screamed. It was not a sound of voice, but a sound of reality fracturing. The pristine skies, which had known only the soft ambient glow of divine light for eons, suddenly darkened as if bruised by a blunt instrument. There was no portal, no swirling vortex of Kai to announce his arrival. There was simply existence, and then a violation of it. Goku stood at the steps of the Grand Priest's floating palace. But this was not the Son Goku who had fought Jiren, nor the mortal who had begged for training. Standing there was an entity cast in living platinum. His skin was shielded by scales that shimmered with an impossible luster, reflecting not light, but the fear of those who looked upon them. His eyes, vertical slits of burning crimson, held no rage, only the terrifying calm of a predator who has outgrown its ecosystem. The air around him did not flow. It broke. The gravitational pressure of the Platinum Dragon King crushed the floating islands of the angel realm into dust before he even lifted a finger. The hierarchy of the cosmos had shifted in a single heartbeat. The prey had become the judge. The age of angels is ending, and the era of the dragon is about to be carved into the stars. Before the Grand Priest falls and history is rewritten, anchor yourself to this timeline. Subscribe and witness the birth of a new apex. The angel realm was not merely a place. It was a state of being. It was the white heart of existence, a dimension composed entirely of divine law and static perfection. Here, time did not flow like a river, it stood still, like a frozen lake reflecting the absolute authority of the Grand Priest. There was no wind, for wind implies change. There was no night, for darkness implies the unknown. For billions of years, this sanctuary had known only the soft, rhythmic humming of halos and the respectful silence of the children of the cosmos. It was a library of eternity where the books were never opened because the stories were already known. But today the library caught fire. It began not with a sound, but with a heaviness, a sudden, crushing gravity that did not pull downwards but pulled inwards, as if the center of the realm had suddenly developed a black hole hungry for divinity. The ambient light, usually a soft pearl white, began to curdle, turning a sickly shade of gray. The floating islands, marble structures suspended in the holy void, groaned. Stone that had weathered the birth and death of multiverses began to fracture, spiderwebs of cracks racing across their pristine surfaces. High atop the central spire, the Grand Priest stood. He was a being of petite stature but infinite density, his hands clasped behind his back, his blue skin cool and unblemished. He had felt the disturbance the moment it punctured the membrane of his reality. He had felt the extinguishing of his subordinates, 100 lower-tier angels, their lights snuffed out in the lower dimensions like candles pinched by wet fingers. He had felt the shattering of the barrier. Yet, he did not panic. Panic was a biological flaw, a defect of mortals who feared cessation. The Grand Priest felt only a profound intellectual offense. It was the irritation of a master architect watching a muddy boot step onto his blueprints. Son Goku, the Grand Priest whispered. The name tasted like ash. He did not need to turn around to know the intruder was there. The air behind him had become thick, smelling of ozone, sulfur, and something far older, the metallic scent of stardust and ancient blood. The Grand Priest turned slowly, his movements fluid, every inch of him radiating the perfected ultra instinct that was his birthright. There, hovering 10 feet above the sacred floor of the palace, was the anomaly. This was not the Saiyan who had once bowed politely, asking for training with a naive grin. That creature was dead, burned away in the fires of betrayal and loss. The entity that floated before the Grand Priest was a sculpture of violence carved from the hardest substance in creation. Goku's skin was no longer flesh. It was a seamless armor of platinum scales, each one interlocking with biological precision, shimmering with a luster that seemed to absorb the light around it. The scales ran up his neck, consuming his jawline, framing a face that was stoic, cold, and terrifyingly regal. His hair, once the wild black mane of a warrior or the golden flame of a super Saiyan, had settled into a rigid, metallic silver, sweeping back like a crown of blades. But it was the eyes that froze the Grand Priest's blood. The warm, dark eyes of the earth-raised Saiyan were gone. In their place were vertical slits, dragon pupils burning with a crimson so deep it looked like a wound in reality. They were the eyes of a beast that looked at God and saw only prey. Goku lowered himself to the ground. His boots touched the marble floor. Crack! The sound was like a gunshot in a cathedral. The moment his weight settled, the entire floating palace lurched downward. The physics of the angel realm screamed in protest. Goku was not just heavy in mass, he was heavy in existence. He carried the density of the Super Dragon Balls, the weight of 7 galaxies compressed into a humanoid form. The sheer realness of him was incompatible with the ethereal nature of the angelic dimension. "You have desecrated the sanctuary of the Omni Kings," the Grand Priest said. His voice was calm, but it carried a harmonic frequency designed to command obedience from all living things. "You have slaughtered the attendants of the law. You have forsaken your mortality to become this." Goku did not speak immediately. He breathed. A puff of steam, hot and shimmering, escaped his lips, dissolving into the air. When he finally spoke, his voice sounded like 2 grindstones crushing bedrock, deep, resonant, and layered with a guttural growl that vibrated in the Grand Priest's chest. "The law is broken," Goku said. "I am here to sweep up the pieces." The Grand Priest's eyes narrowed slightly. The halo floating behind his head began to spin faster, generating a soft, dangerous hum. "You speak with the arrogance of a beast who has found a new set of claws. Do you truly believe that stealing the power of Zalama elevates you to my station? Zalama was a craftsman. I am the administrator of existence." "Zalama gave everything," Goku replied, his crimson eyes narrowing. "He gave his soul so I could stand here. You give nothing. You only take." The air between them began to warp. The tension was no longer psychological, it was physical. Sparks of black and red electricity began to arc off Goku's platinum shoulders, snapping against the white floor, leaving scorched craters. The Grand Priest unclasped his hands. It was a small gesture, but in the language of the gods, it was a declaration of war. "I will not erase you immediately, Son Goku," the Grand Priest said, his tone dropping an octave, losing its politeness. "I will disassemble you. I will peel back these stolen scales one by one until I find the frightened mortal hiding underneath. I will make you understand the difference between a dragon and an angel." Goku tilted his head. The movement was sharp, avian, predatory. He clenched his fist, and the sound of the platinum scales grinding against each other echoed like drawing a sword. "There is no mortal left," Goku said. "There is only the hunger." The Grand Priest did not assume a fighting stance. Such things were for those who needed leverage, for warriors who relied on muscles and tendons to generate force. He simply raised his right hand, index finger extended, pointing directly at the center of Goku's platinum chest. It was the gesture of a teacher correcting a mistake on a chalkboard, casual, precise, and absolute. "Deconstruct," the Grand Priest commanded. It was not a beam of energy, it was a rewrite of reality. The space around Goku instantly turned a violent shade of violet, the color of raw erasure. This was the technique that gave the gods of destruction their nightmares. It was a command to the atoms themselves to untie their bonds, to forget the physics that held them together and return to the void. Under normal circumstances, a galaxy would have dissolved into subatomic mist in a microsecond. The violet light engulfed Goku completely. The roar of the energy was deafening, a high-pitched screech of existence being deleted. The Grand Priest lowered his hand, expecting to see empty air. He expected the silence of a problem solved. But the screeching did not stop. It changed pitch. It sounded like metal screeching against a grinder. As the violet light faded, a silhouette remained. Goku stood exactly where he had been. He had not blocked. He had not raised a barrier. The erasure energy was still there, clinging to him, but it was behaving strangely. It was sliding off his scales like rain off a slick window pane. The energy hissed and popped, desperately trying to bite into the platinum armor, trying to find a purchase on his existence, but it found no grip. Goku looked down at his own chest. He brushed a speck of violet energy off his shoulder with a casual, dismissive swipe of his hand. The energy dissipated into harmless sparks. "Is that it?" Goku asked. The question was devoid of mockery. It was genuine curiosity, which made it infinitely more insulting. The Grand Priest's eyes widened, a microscopic fraction, but for an angel, it was a scream of shock. "My authority, it refused to take hold." "You don't understand," Goku said, taking a heavy step forward. The sound of his boot hitting the floor sent a tremor through the Grand Priest's spine. "Your magic works on the things Zeno created. It works on the laws of this multiverse, but I am no longer part of your system." Goku tapped the center of his chest, where the scales were thickest, glowing with a faint, rhythmic pulse, the heartbeat of the dragon. "I am a wish," Goku growled. "I am a wish made flesh by the Super Dragon Balls, and a wish cannot be erased by the one who grants it. I am outside your jurisdiction, priest." The Grand Priest felt a cold sensation he had not experienced since the dawn of time. Uncertainty. He realized instantly the strategic error. He was an administrator trying to delete a file that had been encrypted by the architect. The Super Dragon Balls were created by Zalama, a being whose power predated the hierarchy of angels. By fusing with them, Goku had essentially become a living paradox, a creature of infinite magical immunity. "If the laws cannot unmake you," the Grand Priest said, his voice hardening, losing its ethereal quality, "then I shall simply rewrite the space you occupy." The Grand Priest threw both hands outward. The reality of the angel realm twisted. Gravity reversed, then multiplied by a factor of 10 billion. The white sky folded in on itself, creating a dimensional kaleidoscope. He was bending the coordinates of space, attempting to fold Goku into a singularity, to crush him between the pages of dimension itself. The floor beneath Goku liquefied. The air turned into solid crystal. Space warped into a labyrinth of non-Euclidean angles. It was a display of mastery that would have made Whis look like a novice magician. Goku stopped walking. He looked around at the twisting reality. The walls were now the floor. The sky was a tunnel. The pressure of 10 billion gravities bore down on his shoulders, enough to flatten a star into a pancake. Goku sighed. It was a sound of disappointment. "Still playing tricks," the Dragon King muttered. Goku clenched his fists at his waist. He didn't power up. He didn't scream. He simply flexed. He flexed his reality against the Grand Priest's reality. Shatter. It wasn't a metaphor. The distorted space around Goku physically broke. Like a mirror struck by a hammer, the twisted dimensions cracked and fell away in jagged shards of transparent energy. The gravity normalization returned instantly. The illusion of control evaporated. Goku had simply exerted his presence, the sheer density of his dragon soul, and the Grand Priest's spatial manipulation had shattered against it. Goku stood amidst the falling shards of broken space, his platinum scales gleaming untarnished. He looked bored. "Your magic is annoying," Goku said, his voice dropping to a low rumble that shook the Grand Priest's halo. "It feels like gnats buzzing in my ear. Are you done with the parlor tricks, or do I have to rip that halo off your head to get your attention?" The Grand Priest stared at the Saiyan. For the first time, he saw the true scale of the monster before him. This was not a warrior fighting for a challenge. This was a force of nature, an avalanche, a tsunami, a star collapse. You could not reason with it. You could not command it. You could only survive it. The angel slowly lowered his hands. The glowing ring behind his head stopped spinning and locked into place, glowing with a blinding intensity. The Grand Priest's expression shifted. The aloof deity vanished. In his place stood a warrior with cold, dead eyes. "Very well," the Grand Priest said softly. "If the laws of creation cannot bind you, Then I will resort to the primitive methods you monkeys are so fond of. I will break your body with my own hands." "Finally!" Goku grinned. It was a terrifying expression, his dragon fangs flashing in the dim light. "Don't hold back. I want to see what the Father of Angels tastes like when he bleeds." The transition from magical warfare to physical combat was not marked by a scream or an explosion. It was marked by the death of sound. The chaotic noise of the previous moments, the grinding of space, the screech of failed erasure vanished instantly. The angel realm returned to its terrifying, pristine silence, but this silence was heavier. It was the indrawn breath of a universe waiting for the first punch to be thrown. The Grand Priest did not move, yet he was everywhere. He had entered the apex of ultra instinct, a state far beyond what mortals achieved. His body was no longer governed by conscious thought. It was a conduit for pure reactionary existence. He was not dodging. He was simply already where the attack was not. He was not striking. His fist was simply arriving at its destination before the intent was formed. He vanished. There was no blur of motion, no displacement of air. He simply ceased to exist in one coordinate and reappeared in another, right in front of Goku's face. A fist, small, but carrying the concentrated kinetic energy of a collapsing dwarf star, drove into the center of Goku's throat. Clang. The sound was not of flesh striking flesh. It was the sound of a diamond hammer hitting an anvil forged from the core of a neutron star. A shockwave of pure white force exploded from the point of impact, flattening the horizon of the angel realm, blowing away the distant nebula clouds. Goku's head did not snap back. His neck did not even tense. He stood perfectly still, his vertical pupils staring down at the small blue hand buried against his windpipe. The platinum scales at his throat were not even scratched. They glowed with a dull, radioactive heat where the blow had connected, absorbing the kinetic energy as if it were a mild breeze. The Grand Priest's eyes, usually void of emotion, widened slightly in a micro-expression of disbelief. His perfect strike, a blow that would have decapitated Beerus and shattered Whiss's staff, had been stopped dead by mere skin. Before the Grand Priest could retract his arm, Goku smiled. It was a slow, horrifying peeling back of metallic lips to reveal teeth that were too long, too sharp. "My turn," Goku whispered. Goku didn't use technique. He didn't need martial arts. When you are a living planet of platinum dragon muscle, technique is redundant. He simply swung his arm. It was a haymaker, clumsy and wide, a move any novice martial artist would scoff at. But it moved with such impossible velocity that the air in front of it ignited into plasma. The sheer air pressure created a vacuum that pulled the Grand Priest toward the fist. The Grand Priest, relying on his autonomic movement, bent backward at an impossible angle, the fiery knuckles grazing his nose. He dodged it perfectly, but he couldn't dodge the shockwave. The displaced air hit the Grand Priest like a physical wall. He was blasted backward, his small frame tumbling through the white void for miles before he righted himself, his heels skidding on the hardened atmosphere. A thin trickle of pale blue blood leaked from his left nostril. The Grand Priest touched the blood, looking at it with alien confusion. It was the first time in 5 billion years that his own biology had been breached. "You are slow," Goku's voice boomed from miles away, closing the distance instantly without teleporting. He was just fast. A raw, terrifying speed born of immense leg strength kicking off the fabric of space itself. Goku crashed down in front of the priest, the impact creating a crater in the nothingness. Your body moves on its own because your mind is too slow to keep up. You rely on instinct because you've forgotten how to fight with your soul. The Grand Priest's calm fractured. A cold, divine rage flooded his being. "Do not lecture me on the nature of combat, usurper. I am the progenitor of all martial forms." The Grand Priest blurred into motion again. This time it was not a single strike, but a bombardment. He became a storm of white light, striking Goku 1,000,000,000 times in a single second. Blows landed on every pressure point, every joint, every conceivable weak spot on the humanoid anatomy. The air was filled with the deafening, continuous metallic ringing of clang, 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 clang. Goku just stood there. He didn't block. He didn't dodge. He took every single hit. His body was a statue of indifference amidst a hurricane of divine violence. The platinum scales heated up, glowing brighter and brighter until Goku was a blazing silhouette of silver fire. But they did not break. The Grand Priest was fighting a mountain with a toothpick. His perfect technique was meaningless against absolute durability. Goku grew bored. In the middle of the bombardment, Goku simply reached out. He didn't aim. He just grabbed a handful of space where the Grand Priest happened to be moving. His platinum fingers closed around the Grand Priest's face. The bombardment stopped instantly. The silence returned, heavier than ever. The Grand Priest froze. His ultra instinct had failed to evade the grab. It wasn't because Goku was faster, it was because Goku's hand had occupied so much space with such overwhelming gravitational presence that there was nowhere left to dodge to. Goku lifted the small angel off his feet by his face. The Grand Priest dangled there, his blue legs kicking futilely at the air. Muffled sounds of outrage came from behind the massive platinum hand crushing his skull. Goku brought the priest close to his face, staring deep into the panicked eyes visible between his fingers. The heat coming off Goku's body was intense enough to singe the priest's divine garments. "You angels always talk about flow and letting go," Goku growled, his breath smelling of smoke and sulfur. "But you've never had to hold on for dear life. You've never fought when your body is broken and your ki is empty. You've never been desperate." Goku tightened his grip. The platinum scales bit into the Grand Priest's blue skin. "I have," Goku whispered, "and that desperation is stronger than your perfection." Goku pulled his other arm back. The air around his fist collapsed, forming a swirling vortex of red and black energy. It wasn't a Kamehameha. It was just a punch, loaded with the primal hatred of a species tired of being ruled by indifferent gods. He fired the punch point blank into the Grand Priest's chest. Crack boom! The sound was sickening. It was the sound of ribs that had never known impact shattering into dust. The Grand Priest's eyes rolled back in his head as the air was forcibly ejected from his lungs in a bloody geyser. He was launched backward with such velocity that he became a streak of blue light, tearing through the horizon of the angel realm. He crashed through one floating palace, then another and another, punching holes through the divine architecture like a cannonball through tissue paper. He finally slammed into the base of the central spire, Zeno's throne room, embedding himself deep in the white stone. The Grand Priest slumped forward, coughing up copious amounts of blue blood. His chest was a concave ruin. He tried to stand, his legs trembling violently, his perfect poise shattered forever. Behind him, the beautiful, glowing halo that always floated behind his head, the symbol of his absolute authority, flickered. A hairline fracture appeared in the glowing ring, then another. With a sound like breaking glass, a large shard of the halo broke off and fell to the ground, dissolving into light before it hit the floor. The Grand Priest looked down at the broken piece of his divinity, true fear finally dawning in his eyes. Goku landed softly a few feet away. He didn't have a scratch on him. He looked down at the broken angel, his expression devoid of pity. "Your halo is crooked, priest," Goku said quietly. "Let me fix it for you." The Grand Priest leaned against the cold white stone of Zeno's palace, his breath coming in ragged, wet gasps. Blue blood stained the pristine front of his robes, a stark violation of his own purity. He looked at Goku, not with the analytical detachment of a deity, but with the raw, visceral terror of a creature who realizes the food chain has inverted. Logic had failed. Martial arts had failed. The very hierarchy of strength, which he had curated for eons, lay in ruins at the feet of this platinum monster. But the Grand Priest was not just a warrior, he was the custodian of the multiverse. He held keys to doors that should never be opened. "You are an abomination!" the Grand Priest wheezed, wiping blood from his chin. His voice was thin, stripped of its echo. "You think brute force is the pinnacle? You think breaking my ribs breaks my purpose?" The Grand Priest's eyes suddenly flared with a terrifying colorless light. He didn't power up. He powered down. The aura around him vanished completely, sucking the heat out of the air until the temperature dropped to absolute zero. "There are places where strength does not exist," he whispered. "Places where time has no meaning, where space has no dimension, a grave for gods." The Grand Priest slammed both palms onto the ground. Dimensional exile, the white void. It wasn't an attack, it was a subtraction. The floor beneath Goku didn't break. It vanished. The sky didn't turn black. It ceased to be a sky. In a nanosecond, the angel realm was gone. Goku was no longer standing in Zeno's courtyard. He was floating in a nothingness that was more terrifying than darkness. It was a blank, white expanse of pure non-existence, no stars, no sound, no direction. Even his own body felt distant, as if the concept of Goku was being slowly forgotten by the universe. The Grand Priest's voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere. "This is the gap between the 12 universes. It is the canvas before paint. There is no matter here to push against, no energy to absorb. You are trapped in the conceptual zero. You will drift here for eternity, a dragon in a cage of nothing." Goku floated in the whiteness. He tried to fly, but flight requires space to move through. He tried to fire a ki blast, but the energy dissipated instantly, having no medium to travel in. It was the ultimate prison. A solitude so profound it could drive an immortal mind into madness in seconds. Goku closed his eyes. He drifted. Seconds passed, then minutes or perhaps years. In this place they were the same. The Grand Priest watched from the safety of the angel realm, viewing the trapped Saiyan through a scrying pool of water. He let out a shaky sigh of relief. The brute was contained. The anomaly was quarantined. "Rest now, dragon," the priest muttered, clutching his broken chest. "Fade into legend." Inside the white void, Goku's eyes snapped open. They were no longer just red. They were glowing with a prismatic light, the 7 colors of the Super Dragon Ball swirling in his pupils. "He thinks I need space to move?" Goku's thought echoed in his own mind. He looked at his hand. The platinum scales were vibrating. The Super Dragon Balls inside him were not just batteries of power. They were the source code of reality. Zalama didn't just build the universe, he dreamed it. And Goku was now the dreamer. "I don't need a door," Goku growled, his voice vibrating through the nothingness, creating sound where physics said it was impossible. Goku raised his right hand. He didn't make a fist. He extended his fingers into a claw, rigid, sharp, and hooked. He focused not on breaking a wall, but on gripping the concept of distance itself. "If there is no path," Goku roared, his aura exploding in a chaotic mix of platinum and crimson fire, "I will tear one open." Dragon Claw, reality rend. Goku slashed his hand downward. It was a movement that defied definition. He didn't slash the air, he slashed the definition of the void. His claws hooked into the fabric of the dimension, the invisible, intangible code that defined the prison, and pulled. "Reap!" The sound was unbearable. It was the screech of the universe's skin being torn apart. In the angel realm, the scrying pool exploded. The Grand Priest screamed and covered his ears as the sky above him split open. It looked like a wound in the heavens. A massive, jagged tear appeared in the white sky of the angel realm, miles long. Through the tear, a chaotic storm of red lightning poured out, vomiting the raw, unfiltered energy of the void. And from that wound, 2 massive platinum hands emerged. They gripped the edges of the dimensional tear. The muscles on Goku's arms bulged, straining against the fabric of reality. He was physically prying the dimension apart like a man opening a set of heavy elevator doors. "Impossible!" the Grand Priest shrieked, backing away, tripping over his own robes. "He's breaching the dimensional wall with brute strength!" With a final earth-shaking roar, Goku ripped the hole wide open. He stepped through. He stepped out of the sky, dragging the tattered remnants of the dimension behind him like a broken cape. The reality around him distorted and healed as he re-entered the angel realm. He crashed down onto the palace floor, the impact shattering the remaining pillars. Steam poured off his body. His scales were glowing white-hot from the friction of tearing space-time. He looked like a demon emerging from the underworld, unstoppable and absolutely furious. He stood up slowly, shaking the dimensional debris off his shoulders. He looked at the Grand Priest, who was now trembling uncontrollably on the ground. Goku didn't yell, he didn't boast, he just pointed a clawed finger at the angel. "You can hide in the void," Goku said, his voice low and terrifyingly calm. "You can hide in the timeline. You can hide in the cracks of existence, but I will find you. I will tear down every wall you put up until there is nowhere left to run." The Grand Priest stared up at the monster. The realization hit him with the force of a falling moon. This wasn't a fight. It was an execution. And the executioner had just kicked down the door to the gallows. The Grand Priest did not rise. He knelt amidst the rubble of his own sanctuary, his small frame trembling against the cold marble. The white robes, once symbols of unassailable authority, were tattered and stained with the glowing blue ichor of his own lifeblood. Above him, the sky of the angel realm still bled red lightning from the wound Goku had torn in the fabric of the dimension. It was a scar that would never heal, a permanent reminder that the absolute wall between existence and void had been breached by a pair of hands. Goku walked toward him. He did not rush. He did not fly. He walked with the heavy rhythmic cadence of a pendulum swinging toward midnight. Thud, thud, thud. Each footfall cracked the floor, sending spiderwebs of fractures racing toward the kneeling angel. The Grand Priest looked up. His violet eyes, which had watched universes be born and extinguished with the same indifference one might give to a falling leaf, were now wide with a frantic, animalistic comprehension. He saw the Platinum Dragon not as a warrior, but as an event horizon. There was no negotiating with it. There was no outsmarting it. "You cannot do this," the Grand Priest whispered. His voice was brittle, cracking under the weight of his fear. "I am the connection between the Xenos and the multiverse. I am the tether of order. If you kill me, the administration of the 12 universes collapses. Chaos will consume everything." Goku stopped 5 feet away. He towered over the angel, his shadow casting a long, dark shape over the fallen deity. The heat radiating from Goku's platinum scales was suffocating, a dry, intense furnace heat that made the air shimmer. "Chaos," Goku repeated, tasting the word. He tilted his head, his vertical pupils narrowing. "You call it chaos because you can't control it. I call it freedom." The Grand Priest grit his teeth. A spark of his ancient pride flared, a dying ember in a cold ash pit. He was the father of angels. He was the mentor of Whis, of Vados, of Kus. He had stood by the side of the Omni King since the first second of time ticked forward. He would not die on his knees like a common mortal. "I am the law!" the Grand Priest screamed. With a final desperate burst of energy, the Grand Priest lunged. He summoned the last dregs of his power, condensing all his remaining magic into a single blade of pure, blinding white light extending from his hand. It was the Lance of Adjudication, a weapon designed to sever the thread of fate itself. He thrust the blade upward, aiming directly for Goku's heart. It was a strike of perfect precision, faster than light, fueled by the hysteria of a dying god. Clack! The sound was small, insignificant. Goku had not dodged. He had not blocked with his arm. He had caught the blade of pure energy between his thumb and forefinger. The Grand Priest froze, his arm extended, his eyes bulging. He pushed with everything he had, straining until his veins bulged against his blue skin, but the blade would not move a millimeter. Goku held the ultimate weapon of angelic law as if he were holding a toothpick. Goku looked down at the blade, then at the priest. The expression on the Dragon King's face was one of profound disappointment. "Your law is brittle," Goku said softly. Snap. Goku twisted his fingers. The energy blade shattered like glass. Shards of white light exploded outward, dissolving into harmless sparks before they hit the ground. The Grand Priest stumbled back, his balance gone, his final gambit crushed. He looked at his empty hand, then up at the monster who had dismantled his existence. What are you? The Grand Priest gasped, his voice barely a whisper. Goku raised his right hand. The platinum scales on his arm shifted, locking together to form a rigid, razor-sharp gauntlet. His fingernails elongated into terrifying curved talons that gleamed with a deadly silver light. The energy of the Super Dragon Balls flooded into the limb, turning the air around his hand into a distortion field. "I am the consequence," Goku replied. He didn't wind up. He didn't scream. He simply swiped his hand diagonally across the empty air. Dragon Claw, Heaven Sever. The motion was so fast it didn't register as movement. It registered as a glitch in reality. A thin black line appeared in the space between them. It started at the Grand Priest's left shoulder and ended at his right hip. For a second, nothing happened. The Grand Priest stood perfectly still. The wind stopped blowing. The red lightning in the sky froze. Then the sound caught up. Sh-thwoom. It was the wet, heavy sound of separation. The Grand Priest's eyes went blank. A line of white light appeared on his chest, tracing the path of Goku's claw. The light expanded, consuming his form. There was no blood this time. There was only the release of massive amounts of pent-up divine energy. The Grand Priest's body slid apart. The top half of the High Father of Angels slid slowly, agonizingly off the bottom half. As the two halves separated, his physical form began to disintegrate. The blue skin turned to gray ash. The white robes turned to dust. The halo, which lay broken on the floor, evaporated into nothingness. The greatest authority in the multiverse, the being who made gods of destruction tremble, dissolved into a cloud of sparkling cosmic dust. He was gone, executed in a single stroke. Goku lowered his hand. The talons retracted. The platinum scales smoothed out. He stood alone in the ruins of the palace, and the silence that followed was heavy, almost physical. It was the silence of a hierarchy that had been decapitated. The heavy pressure of the Grand Priest's presence, which had weighed on the multiverse for eons, simply lifted. Across the 12 universes, every angel, Whis, Vados, Margarita, suddenly stopped what they were doing, their staffs dropping from their hands as they felt the impossible severance of their connection to their father. Goku exhaled, a long stream of steam escaping his lips. He felt the dragon soul inside him rumble with satisfaction. The obstacle was removed. Slowly, deliberately, Goku turned his head. He looked past the pile of ash that used to be the Grand Priest. He looked toward the massive, colorful double doors that led to the inner sanctum. The doors to the throne room. The doors were slightly ajar. Through the crack, two pairs of oval eyes were watching. Zeno and future Zeno. The Omni Kings were not laughing. They were not playing with planets. They were huddled together, clutching each other's hands. Their childlike faces twisted in an expression they had never known before. Terror. They had watched the fight. They had seen their protector, their father figure, the invincible Grand Priest, get torn apart like wet paper. Goku turned his body fully toward them. He began to walk toward the throne room. The sound of his boots on the marble was the only sound in existence. Step, step, step. As he approached the doors, the Xenos flinched, retreating deeper into the shadows of their throne. Goku stopped at the threshold. He didn't bow. He didn't speak in the high-pitched, playful tone he used to use. He looked at the two small kings with his burning, vertical dragon pupils. His platinum aura flared, not with aggression, but with a regal, overwhelming dominance that filled the entire palace. "The game is over," Goku said. His voice was low, echoing off the walls of the throne room like thunder in a canyon. He stepped inside. The era of angels had ended in ash. The era of the Dragon King had begun.